there, welcome to or welcome back to Lorena's Labyrinth. I'm Anna Pirelli, and of course I'm delivering this three-part series. It's turned out to be a three-part series, in case you weren't aware, on working with friendship circles and establishing what are our healthy friendships, where we should be investing our time and energy, with who, and how we can learn not only to discern who is trustworthy, but also how we can learn to trust our own instincts. Now, if you haven't watched part one, I know that it's time consuming, but I would very much recommend that you do go and look at part one first. And this is because the content that I'm delivering in these three videos, it comes to about 3 hours worth. Now, realistically, in my study settings, if you like, when I was doing my studies of social work, my Masters of Counselling, which, just to qualify here, I didn't complete that. I did the units on it. This is condensing about 24 hours worth of content into 3 hours worth of tutorials. So if you find it at all unsettling for you, or you need to take time away to process the content, then do it. Do manage and monitor your own self-care. But anyway, so going back to where we've been, in the first section, we had a look at, what is respect, what is trust, and things like that. What is respect? We're going to revisit some of these topics just to freshen up, expand on them. We're going to bring in new information on how we can start the process of evaluating our friendships by getting an understanding of our own expectations and our limitations. And anyway, before we go any further, let's go and have a look at what type of friends are we looking for. Are we looking for enablers, or are we looking for people that will empower us to be the best that we can be, people that will support us to achieve our goals? I would imagine most people want those kind of friends. So this is what we're looking at today. So in part one, just to revisit, we did discuss empowerment versus enablement. Ideally in our lives, we want those people that are close to us to be supportive of us to achieve our goals, and as part of being well and happy. So we need to establish, as part of who we let close to us and into our inner sanctum, whether or not these friends are empowerers or enablers. And there's room for all types, okay? Just because somebody's not an empowerer doesn't mean that they're not a good friend, but it helps to identify where we're going to place them in our friendship circles. So, in brief, empowerment is a process of being included in any of the decisions that are made about us. That includes asking permission and identifying and responding to our comfort levels around our planning or future planning or goal setting. Within a mental health setting, just by the by, this looks like the support worker or the family member saying, with regard to confidentiality, okay, what can I discuss with your doctor or with your parent, especially if it's family caregiving? What permissions are there, and is there any limitations or restrictions about sharing information? Now, I do go down a rabbit warren here because of obviously my training and background. When we talk about this stuff and when we talk about rights, they always come with a responsibility, because rights are not standalone. Whatever rights we do have responsibilities to ensure that we extend the same rights to other people. And quite often it's overlooked in a mental health setting when it comes to family caregivers. So just a demonstration of this, right? Let's say somebody who is psychologically unwell or released from or being treated through a clinical mental health team. Just pulling words, okay? Let's say they're being treated and supported, and they've got a history of addiction, and the person that is unwell is living at home with mum and dad, and they play a very active role in supporting this person, and that might include paying their bills, transporting them to facilities, etc., right? The client or the person will often say to the clinicians, yes, I've started using crack again, but don't tell mum or don't tell dad, right? And the clinicians will quite often, I'm talking about in the Australian setting, adhere to that because they will hide behind the business of the client has a right to privacy and confidentiality. And in so doing, what they do is they disregard the rights of the caregiver. And that's a failure, as far as I'm concerned, in OSH responsibilities towards the caregiver who picks up the burden of care. Let's be real, the clinicians are only on the scene 1 or 2 hours a week. The caregivers are at home dealing with this and working with this every single day in this kind of scenario. And if the person they care for, as an example, has got these coexisting conditions, including addiction, and they start using again, then the carer needs to know this because they need to be able to modify the way they respond to stress. It will help them to understand what's going on for the person. This is at the very least, that when they're coming down, because they have rapid mood swings, shall we say, when they're on the down, they can become quite aggressive. So that doesn't mean to say that they will become violent, although some people do become violent. I consider that clinicians have got a responsibility to, at the very least, inform the client. Your mother, father, carer needs to know this for their own sake, and they have the right to know. And so you've got a responsibility to make sure they know. Now, I'm letting you know, this is what they could say. I'm going to have to tell your parent or the carer as a responsibility, but I want to give you the option to tell them first. That would be a far better way of handling it. So just a thought there. That's just talking about rights, responsibilities, and the empowerment aspect still comes into that respect to the caregiver by giving the client the opportunity to inform first, letting them know the parameters and the boundaries of the caring relationship, and that they've got responsibilities to the caregiver as well, but giving that person opportunity to deal with it first. So empowerment versus enablement. Moving on to the next slide. So let's revisit the definition of respect as well, because it's a fancy little word, it's bandied around everywhere, and we need to have an understanding of what it means when we're talking about it. The dictionary has 2 definitions, and I'll break them down one by one. The first one is, in the dictionary outlined as on this slide, a feeling of deep admiration for someone, something that is elicited by their abilities, their qualities, or achievements. Now, from a practical perspective, when we're doing up our friendship circles and expectations, is this something that we really genuinely feel that we can elicit from those people around us, that they admire us because we are so fabulous, and therefore this makes them a good friend to us? I don't think so, right? My response to this is, this kind of respect is the type of respect that we hold, the admiration, for people that we don't usually know or that we don't know very well. It could be your favourite actor or musician and you're a fan of theirs. You admire what they've done and their achievements, but you don't necessarily know them from a bar of soap, we would say. There's almost a level of hero worshipping at times with this type of respect, although, right, it's not restricted to just that. You can admire and respect perhaps a mentor or a lecturer or somebody that's just given you some really wise, sage advice. You can admire them for that and respect them. But at the same time, you can actively dislike a person but still respect and admire their achievements, and their successes. I mean, so putting this into perspective, I can't even remember the name of the guy that founded Amazon, right? I mean, we can question his morality because apparently he's worth more than a bear can poo in the woods, all of that stuff. But we can still admire and respect his achievements for the fact that he thought up this great idea. If he didn't actually think of it himself, he has basically constructed it. You know what I mean? So Amazon, eBay, all of these type of things, you can respect the intellect that goes into that, and you can admire it to a certain extent. But does it mean that they're our friends? Not at all. The next one is the due regard for feelings, wishes, or rights of others. This one resonates with me more. Let's take a look at that. So the other meaning of respect, as I just said, is the due regard for the feelings, wishes or rights of others. However, if we're talking about it within the context of friendship, we want our friends to care about, because regard is caring, for our feelings, our hopes, our wishes, our dreams, and to support us in our rights. Now, at the same time, it's reciprocal, isn't it? If we want respect, we need to be able to extend that respect to others. So consider that. So now let's unpack the word expectation, because expectations are going to inform the decisions we make about our associations and friendships. So once again, we've got two meanings of the word expectation. This is based on the Collins Dictionary. They are a person's, your strong beliefs, which you hold about the proper way someone should behave or something should happen. That's one of them. Then the other one, of course, is they are your strong hopes or beliefs that something will happen or that you will get something you want. Right, so that's the definition of expectation. So the consideration here is that whatever expectations we have to also take into account that we really have no control over other people. They are free agents, if you like. They make decisions for themselves, and it is highly unlikely that we're going to meet one person or have one friend that is going to be able to meet all of the expectations that we would like in a friend. And if we sort of create a list of what our expectations of a friendship are, and we say, you must be my friend, or to be my friend, you must have all of these qualities, it's going to be loaded with disappointment. We have to be reasonable around the expectations that we hold of others, and we have to recognise it is not humanly possible to be all things to all people. And don't forget, we all as individuals have different values, and we apply different interpretations and meanings to events, actions, words, and all the rest of it. And this is why there is the benefit of understanding the languages of love, because just because we don't appreciate the actions of a person doesn't mean that they are not being loving and kind to us. It's just perhaps they put a different emphasis or priority on the actions. Now, we've put this video up. The Language of Love is in the playlist, and you can also Google and explore it. Just because a person doesn't speak the same language doesn't mean that you can't have a healthy friendship or relationship. It just means sometimes you've got to put a little bit more time and effort into understanding and communication. And that's about negotiation, mediation, and to some extent compromise. Just depends on the people involved. So we've just briefly revisited the topics of, respect, expectation, empowerment, enablement as part of informing our decision-making about our relationships. But what we haven't really talked about at this stage, and it's a vital ingredient of any friendship, is trust. But before we can talk about trust, we need to have an understanding of what the word vulnerability means, because this is what makes trust so important. So let's for now explore what vulnerability is. It doesn't mean weakness. Many years ago, before I started my studies, I hadn't realised that I was vulnerable because I didn't associate, or I didn't fully understand what vulnerability meant, and I associated the term with weakness. It's not that at all. So regardless of a friendship, there is that sharing of the meaningful moments or the qualities. That's an opening or sharing of vulnerabilities with each other. So whether the friend is an empowerer or an enabler or any of the other types of friendships you can have, when we start talking about the inner workings of ourselves, our souls, our family, our problems and that kind of stuff, we invariably are giving these people access to our vulnerabilities. Now, going back to what I was talking about with my studies, we did explore vulnerability from a different perspective, and it was from a social structure perspective. And as I said, it was very breathtaking for me to realise that I was quite vulnerable at the time. Because I'd associate it with weakness. We all have vulnerabilities, every single one of us. These are the areas that we can struggle to bounce back from. Children, aged citizens, very vulnerable people, as are the people that are mentally ill, struggling with psychological distress. And the best way I think that I could probably define it to make people less sensitive about it is to equate it to what they call ecological theory, which is going back to the tree. At different times in our lives, we're more vulnerable to the actions that happen in our environment. We're going to talk about resilience in a minute. But by vulnerability, I mean, if you look at this slide here, we've got this palm tree blowing in the wind, and it's certainly surviving and thriving against the elements. The environment's not impacting on it, and the strength of the wind is not snapping that tree. Now, a younger tree might not cope with the wind in the same way that this fully grown palm is coping with it. It might need to be tied if it's a sapling and propped up with a stake. It might need to have some shade to protect it from burning, the sunburn, so that it doesn't get killed off. It will definitely need to have some water, some nourishment, while it develops its rootstock, so that it can thrive and survive independently. And it might even need to have some soil enhancers while it's growing, so that it can grow healthy and strong. And at the same time, during these growth phases, it might need to be monitored and checked to ensure that no plant disease is kicking in, and that it receives appropriate treatment, such as, I've got palm trees in my backyard, so I quite resonate with this. They can get a fungal infection, and if it's not treated in the early stages, it can actually carry and spread to others. So to maintain health, yes, it's got to be treated appropriately at the right times. So this equates also for the adults within environment. If their health suffers, they may not be able to survive and thrive when things happen within the environment. If the environment changes, or if they've got a natural vulnerability that's there from childhood, such as really low self-esteem, or they come from a dysfunctional or toxic family unit, then they may be more vulnerable to negative critiques, things like that. But we can all identify what our vulnerabilities are by observing our own behaviour within certain situations, and when we have a large reaction or even a mini reaction to something that happens in our environment. So somebody might say something and it irritates us, but it's not really a big deal. We're coping with that. But if a number of people say the same irritating thing, then our frustration may get larger and it might turn into full-blown anger. So anyway, sharing our vulnerabilities is something that we do as friends. And when we share those vulnerabilities, it could be as simple as something, I don't like being called names, trying to think of something that can be... No, I'm not going to find an example of something that can be offensive. I think you can all come up with one where it's not really a big deal, or we know in our head it shouldn't be a big deal, but it creates a big deal for us. So it could be saying to somebody, look, a dear friend, you know what it's like when somebody calls me X or Y, that's it, I just go into a rage, right? That's a trigger and that's a vulnerability. Other vulnerabilities can be more physical, and they can then result in, huge emotional distress, right? And in the current climate at the moment, the economic climate, there's a lot of housing insecurity. So a person that's got housing insecurity and low income is particularly vulnerable, because it might take just one thing and they could lose their accommodation. Excuse me, I need to cough. And they could lose their accommodation and be on the streets. So prime example would be if their job was terminated or whatever, or if they are only being able to sustain their rent because they're renting out a room. If somebody moves out, or if there's a relationship breakdown, then it could end up that they're homeless. So we're talking about empowerment is a case of helping a person to build strength and resilience to change, so that they can survive and thrive regardless of changes in the environment. A good friend, perhaps in the context of housing insecurity, might be somebody that we could contact, because we're a friend, and we say, we've got problems, my housing's insecure, I'm so frightened, or whatever. That's sharing a vulnerability. A friend might turn around and say, oh my goodness me, listen, do you want a second job? I know where you can get a second job. Or do you need to access a tenant's advocate? I can get you a number. that sharing of information with your close friends allows you to problem solve effectively. So anyway, let's take a look now at resilience. So I just gave you some examples in the housing sector, for example, on how a friend can help you to build resilience. But in regard to resilience as a title, obviously, once again, I've just gone and copy and pasted some content I found online onto this slide. So I'll just cite my source so that you know about that. It's called positivepsychology.com. And it's about resilience skills. There's a whole page on this. I might actually put the link into the description if I remember to do it. If I forget, just pop a comment in, please. I'm only too happy to put these kind of resources up. And I also consider, when I was at uni, just so you know, positive psychology was not considered through the university to be a reputable source of our academic information, but we were allowed to use it as a starting point to go off and find credible references for our articles. However, I think, in all fairness, most of us that used to visit the site actually felt that it was quite a good one, quite credible, certainly for mainstream stuff. Anyway, ideally, our friends will help us to build the structures around our vulnerabilities, like around the swinging palm tree. But what I think is helpful to understand is they're not responsible to build the safety structures around us. That is not the responsibility of our friends. That is our responsibility to put them in place. But good friends, we know, will step up to the plate, when we're really unwell, and vice versa. We extend for each other. And I think this is where it's really important to know what are our needs and our wants with friends, so that we can clearly appreciate what they bring to our lives as part of validating them as being great human beings and great friends as well. So there are other ways that our friends can help to build our resilience. You can read these ones on the slide here. I'll just offer you some living examples if you like. They might say things such as, you've got this, you have, you're really good at this, you are strong, you are capable, you will get through this. Other things they might say is, I have faith in you, you can do this, right? So they're your cheer squad. Other times they might be, if they're emotionally sensitive type people and this is their personality type, they might turn around and say things like, oh, I understand this is such a stressful time, you poor thing. Have you thought about taking a bath? Are you remembering to do your breathing? Have you been for a walk? Have you thought about, I'm just asking you, because I know when you're stressed out that you start skipping meals. Are you eating properly? Because don't forget, go back to that if I can speak, physiology. I can't even speak it. I'll try again. Physiology of distress, right? Go back to that, because if your diet is inadequate, you certainly are going to experience some compounded psychologically distressing symptoms. So a good friend is going to remind you, if they know that you've got patterns of behavior, just how to stay physically well through these stressful times. Other times a friend might turn around and say, oh, yep, you do have the right to confront this person. Let's say there's a showdown at work and we all do it, phone up our friend and go like, oh my God, I'm so angry and I need to tell this person, but I'm just so angry I might say the wrong thing and make it worse for myself. And a good friend might turn around and go like, oh, yep, I get you. I understand why you're so upset, and yep, I totally get that you need to confront this person for your own sanity. I can understand your concerns that you might let rip and say the wrong thing. So in my experience, having a good friend, they can turn around and say to you, practice on me, right? Tell me what you're going to say to this person. Pretend I am that person, and you're going to tell me right now what it is that you need to say in a calm way. And then they can feed back to you and go, oh, you know what? Actually, I'd change this word or I'd change that, because they might take that personally, or this might have a consequence that you haven't thought of, And then other times a good friend who knows their limits will turn around and say, you know what, actually, this is outside my area of expertise. I'm I just don't know what I would do in this situation if I was you. Maybe you need to speak to a professional, a therapist, a lawyer, a doctor, right? Do you want me to see if I can find one? Do you want to do it yourself? Let me know how that rolls. Okay, so this is all part of good, healthy friendships, building resilience and empowering type friends, I might add. So, in the first instance, this diagram that I've got here is I didn't go through my studies to find the original diagram, but I remember that these are the ingredients that were related to this triangle. That trust is basically right up there. It's not something that you get on the ground floor, it's something that is developed over a period of time and identified as part of respect. So, we've talked about respect. When we know a person has respect for us and our comfort levels, then we can start trusting them. But if we trust them too soon and make personal disclosures about our vulnerabilities before we have established that those people are trustworthy, it invariably results in betrayal or feeling betrayed because somebody didn't keep our confidences to themselves and they exposed our vulnerabilities. And sometimes the exposure of vulnerabilities can be very harmful. I'm just going to pause this for a moment while I gather some more information. So yeah, if trust is violated by a person, it can make or break a friendship dependent on the circumstances, the nature of the breach, the nature of the vulnerability, and the nature of resilience as well. So trust, there's different descriptions about what trust is, dependability. I think I would be not using the word dependable. I think I would be using the words reliable. That when I know that that person I can rely on to not breach my confidences, that puts them pretty close to my inner sanctum. I would also probably put down that they don't judge me in harsh ways for being human. This is just a thought. I'm going off on a tangent here because I discussed non-judgmentalism in one of the future slides. So that one needs to be unpacked by all of us in regard to our own understandings and interpretations of the word. But definitely when it comes to vulnerability, we want to feel safe with the people that we're around, that when we tell them our secrets, that they don't think badly of us or judge us to be personally inadequate because we have these human foibles or failings, if you like, and that they are not going to bring them out in a public setting so that people can poke fun at them or whatever. We need to trust and feel safe with them and count on them to keep our confidences, because that's what confidentiality is confiding. It's the sharing of confidential information with each other, and it needs to be treated with due respect. And this, of course, leads us back to respect, which is the due regard for feelings, wishes, or rights of others. So within friendships, they are reciprocal. We also talk about this in one of the upcoming slides. The bottom line is, if you're struggling to share your authentic self and be vulnerable with your friend, then this is definitely going to impact on the strength of the friendship in adverse ways. It doesn't mean that we should rush into potential friendships or overshare with acquaintances our vulnerabilities. We still have to identify and establish whether or not that person that we're going to expose our vulnerabilities is trustworthy. And we have to work out when we're safe or that it's safe to share certain information with them. And that only happens over the passage of time, of course, once we've shared a few things with them and they've demonstrated that they're trustworthy. And it goes the other way. So I'm going to give you an example of how easy it is to breach trust within friendships through a living example. Well, not mine, but I'll just give you an example. It's relationship triangulation, and it tends to happen in many friendships and relationships. And it's a topic that we spent actually a lot of time on when I was doing my Masters of Counselling, and how easily it occurs and the consequences of sharing information. Okay. So when we talked about empowerment and respect, we looked also at the fact that just because we may hold, or our friend may hold, our best intentions at heart, it doesn't necessarily equate to them being the best of friends, or it being the best of friendship. Sometimes trust breaches can occur very easily. Let me just reflect on my notes here so I articulate properly. Because once again, I'm trying to condense a big subject down into a couple of minutes of a slide. Okay, so when we triangulate our relationships, then we can potentially harm some friendships irretrievably, and other times we can work through them and strengthen the friendships. Okay, so triangulation occurs when we speak with a third party about a conversation that we had with another. It can, in many instances, be referred to as gossip. Gossip is obviously when there's no regard about whether or not a person's feelings are going to be hurt through the relay of information. But many times these conversations happen with good intention. So triangulation was described when I was at uni as when a relationship experiences a stress or a tension, and we go to a third party as part of releasing the tension. Now, the worst case scenario is when we go to another person or lots of people and whine and complain about our friends and ask them, what would you do? Oh my God, so-and-so is being so emotionally needy at the moment. I just don't know what to do or what to say. And then go into the nature of the problems the person is experiencing while talking to that third party, right? But other times, it's still disrespectful, even if we mean well, right? So I'm just trying to think. Okay, if you haven't gained permission from the person, let's say, I've got this example here. Okay. Right, really simple example, right? You can have two besties, right? You've got Jenny and you've got Jody. We'll use this as an example. You've known Jenny since you were a kid and you trust her implicitly. You have basically a friendship love, and you tell Jenny things, all sorts of things. She knows everything about you, actually, including things that are occurring in your marriage. And so you phone her up one day because hubby's been working really long hours for months now and he's not responsive to you. And you feel that your marriage is turning to clay and you feel you need to talk to somebody. Triangulation, perfect example. But you want to speak to somebody because you think you're stuck in an unhappy marriage and you can't afford to leave. And unless there is a rapid change at home, you're going to have to make a decision, and that will be to leave and leave quickly. So you're choosing to prepare for the worst, but you haven't made that final decision yet to leave because you're holding out hope that the marriage is salvageable. So you have a chat with Jenny. Jenny's really shocked. It was unexpected. She thought you had the perfect marriage. She's frightened for you. She doesn't know what to do or say. She gets off the phone and she has a think and she thinks, I need to speak to somebody. I'll call Jody, right? Because Jody just happens to be your other bestie, right? All three of you are all good mates, and you trust Jody as well because you know she means well. So anyway, Jenny calls Jody without calling you first. Ask one, have you spoken to Jody about what's going on? Or to get permission from you to speak with Jody about finding a solution for you on your behalf. Right, so Jody, you phone Jody up. Jody goes, oh my God, this is terrible. And Jody, this is why we've got the circles on the screen. Jody's got another friend that you've met, her friend Diane. You don't know her really well. You've just met her a couple of times, but you wouldn't call her a bestie because she's not in your circle. She's not in Jenny's circle at all. You know her through extension. But anyway, she gets off the phone to Jody. Jody has a think and thinks, you know what? I'm going to give Diane a call because she works in that field, or she knows people in that field. And anyway, so Jody phones up Diane and she goes, hey, listen, I was speaking to Jody and she was telling me that so-and-so is having some real issues in her marriage at the moment. He's been having an affair and he's been playing around, and it looks like she's going to have to leave fairly quickly. You work in this field. What options do you know? Do you know somebody that can help her? And Diane goes, oh, hang on a moment. Isn't that the one whose husband works at such and such? Because obviously friends share information. And you go, yes, that's the one. That's right. Yes, I forgot you've known her or met her once or twice. But because Diane's new to the circle, Jodie actually doesn't know everything about her, and she hasn't established if she's trustworthy or if there's a conflict here by sharing and disclosing your name and that kind of stuff. And what happens is Diane gets off the phone, she thinks, oh my God, I know him. He's a great guy. Who is this nut job wife that's spreading vicious rumours about him? I can't see him being the sort of person that would play the field at all. So she's now got split loyalties because she actually knows your husband and they have an existing friendship. And then she sort of thinks, well, I don't know the wife, and she's a nut job, obviously. So she calls up your husband, and she says, listen, I've been hearing some rumours that your wife is going to leave you because you're cheating on her, right? And then there's consequences. Then the consequences happen. So these are just potential consequences that might happen. In the first instance, hubby might turn around and say, gee, well, thanks for letting me know, Diane. Leave it with me. No, I'm not having an affair. Just leave it with me. I'll sort it out. Thank you very much. Right? Straight away, he realises, he knows what it's about. He knows that you don't trust him, and he knows exactly why. Because he is in your clear, close sanctum. He knows your vulnerabilities, and he knows that this trust is an ongoing trust issue for you because you've had previous relationships where your romantic partners have cheated on you, and he is fit to be tied. He is furious that he is being tarred with the same brush as your unsavoury exes. So he might come straight home from work and say, right, that's it, I've had enough. I expected greater loyalty from you. You knew that I was trying to get a career promotion, and you've always known that I would be doing overtime. I've been very clear about this. I'm not playing around. You know I've got a really heavy workload at the moment, and now you're spreading rumours about me. And then the chances are, you can almost see this playing out. I'm sure we've all seen it at different times. And you turn and say, well, it's been going on for months now. What did you expect me to think? And he says, I expect you to trust me. I'm your husband. I'm not your previous partners. You've publicly humiliated me. You've questioned my integrity. People will think poorly of me because of your insecurities. And this is not the first time you've done this. I'm leaving you. Could be the worst case scenario. Right? Or he might turn around and say, you know what? I am done with this lack of trust from you. I suggest that you seek help. And if you don't seek help, I will not tolerate this kind of accusations and allegations in the future. You need to get therapy, and this is your last warning. Now, that would be healthy boundary setting on his part. Right? You could quickly quip back with, as a scenario, because everything's kind of defensible. Well, you are aware that I have these insecurities, and I have been asking to speak with you about my current discomfort, but you've not made yourself available. What exactly was I to think? Now, healthy relationship and friendships fall into this as well, is that negotiating of the boundaries and the communication. When I say I need to speak with you, I mean it, right? You didn't listen to me. We could have sorted this out without me working myself up into a state, right? He might turn around and say, well, fair call, you're right. I didn't create the time to speak with you. Okay, what are we going to do going forward? How are we going to manage this? Because the current situation is not sustainable for either of us, right? At best scenario, consequence is the marriage shifts through this comfort, or discomfort rather, and they resolve how they're going to address these kinds of problems in the future, where he will be more responsive to her identified needs, and where she will be more communicative and assertive when she's starting to feel incredibly insecure. All right, this is just an example. But what about the friendships? Okay, the chances are once this kind of stuff happens, the first thing you're going to be doing, right, if this was you, is the moment your hubby's out the house, you're going to get on the phone to Jenny and go like, my God, what did you do? Who did you speak to? What did you say? Because hubby's just come home. We've had a massive fight. It's all right. We're not splitting up. We're staying together. But we've just had the most massive fight. What Did you say to who? Because he came back and told me he'd been informed I was leaving him. All right. And Jodie will go, oh my God, I'm not Jenny, not Jodie. Jenny will then turn around, the bestie of all of her life, and say, look, I'm so sorry. I actually called Jodie because I needed to, I wanted to find some information for you or whatever, right? So then you'll be phoning up Jodie. You'll probably forgive Jenny because, Jenny, you've got that history and you'll know that it's well intended. But then you'll phone up Jodie, and then that's going to be a very uncomfortable phone call. I don't think in that situation that the friendship with Jodie would be sustained because she was very, very indiscreet and because she actually exposed the identity and that kind of stuff. So it actually is a betrayal because there was no de-identification. So what might happen out of this is all of these relationships are going to potentially sever. Predictably, Jodie and Jenny might not be friends anymore either because Jenny might feel betrayed by Jodie. Diane and Jodie might feel very hurt because they feel picked on by the other. You know what I mean? It just goes on and on. And Diane and your husband will continue to have a working relationship, but one there is mutual respect. And the other thing is your husband might end up having a conversation with Diane as part of retrieving his professional integrity to explain to her that your insecurities are part of your past and you're working on it. So a lot of embarrassment and discomfort for a lot of people because of a breach of confidence. So let's revisit the moral compass or your core personal values again now that we've sort of gone through a few of these different scenarios. Hopefully you understand and know your vulnerabilities and your triggers. Hopefully you know what you need to do to put safety structures around them. Just to be clear, once again, the moral compass is private and confidential. We do not share it with anybody. It is our primary and core values. And there is an acknowledgement, or there must be an acknowledgement when we make our moral compass, that your best mate might do a moral compass, and there's going to be similarities between you because that's why you get on so well. But there's going to be differences there as well as to what's important because we're all unique. Just a reminder, the core values should be no more than 10, and 7 is probably a more realistic number to have as core values. But within this, I've put a couple of examples on here of what might be 1 or 2. And we did discuss in the last video that you ask questions when you're doing this, right? What do you expect? Well, integrity. I think that's up there, number 1 for most people. We want the people that we're letting into our inner circle to mean what they say and say what they mean, and to be honest, to tell the truth to you. Fidelity, I think, is a good description because it's a person that sticks to the truth. They have integrity, and the truth, actually, this would probably be a personal value for me. The truth is very, very important to them. They don't like deviations from the truth. So they can actually even be a bit anal about it. It's like, well, don't tell me what you think I want to hear. Tell me what you really think, okay? So there's a fidelity there. But then, obviously, once again, just going through it again, when you put that value down, if we do this core value thing, this chart, what we identify here is whether or not we're being a hypocrite as well will show from this. And if we are being unkind to ourselves, that business of if you want people to respect you, you've got to take a look at, am I being respectful to myself? Am I caring about myself? And then how do I care about others? Where's my integrity? This is going to show up. So in many ways, it's quite confronting to do the personal values and moral compass, but it's a good thing. It's really good. It helps to raise self-awareness, to know your limitations. So this slide here, this is more an opinion piece, I guess, because while the intention is to revisit expectations of friendship through incorporating everything that we've discussed so far, which is empowerment, respect, trust, reciprocity, rights and responsibilities, and marrying them up with our moral compass and our needs and expectations of friends and being realistic, I've pulled up the Better Up slide again in their definitions because I definitely have opinions on this. because I see it as being a disempowering model of friendship. There's nothing about in this description about comfort and discomfort. It doesn't teach people how to become aware of themselves, or even able to become aware of the health of the friendships and associations that they've got. And I don't see it as being, helpful would be one description. I don't see it as being anything more than a very selfish look at what a friend is. Okay, so to put it into perspective, let's take a look at the definitions of friendship they provide again. As part of identifying what kind of friends we want to have in our circles, or where to place our friends in our circles. What else have I got here? We've seen that having good intentions doesn't necessarily make a person a good and trustworthy friend. But anyway, integrity, obviously that's very important. Trustworthiness, they tell you the truth and they have your best intentions at heart. Not necessarily really good, because they can still be untrustworthy even if they mean well. Dependable, I'm not sure that I like that as a description of what I want on my friends. Isn't that somehow equated to dependence? How does that teach or support independence? How does that gel with empowerment theory? Then there's the question for me that, so you can depend on them to listen to your problems. But the key thing is, are you interested in feedback? Because when we have conversations with our friends, if it's only a one-way conversation with them venting relentlessly, that can be absolutely exhausting. And isn't that the job of a therapist anyway? Because really, are our friends skilled in all these areas that a therapist would be? I don't think too many of them would be. Then there is the matter of, is it really fair to expect them to listen to our complaints tirelessly? Then you've got to ask the question, well, do we listen to them endlessly talking about their problems? I suspect, or I would imagine, that this is a desired value. It's not a need. It's not a core value. It's a want. It's an expectation. And it's not necessarily reasonable. It's certainly not a core value for me. I respect everybody's got their own lives and their own problems, so I don't expect them to sit there and listen to me complaining non-stop and validating me and my feelings. If I need that kind of support, I'll go and see a therapist, If I'm in a conversation with a friend and they supported me in this way, I think I would probably be more inclined to actually just be really grateful that I've got that friendship, but I wouldn't expect them to do this for me all the time. I don't also perceive that loyalty is the right word in this particular chart of definitions of what we expect, because to me, loyalty, and I looked up the dictionary on this just to make sure I was going on the right track with it, loyalty is about allegiance and swearing an oath, and your friends, with all due respect, their first loyalty must be to themselves and then to their responsibilities. Now, I guess the best way of explaining this is that if we're parents and we've got young children, and even a husband that's relying on us for support, or an intimate partner, well, they're our first responsibilities and they're our first loyalties. So conflicting loyalties are often a primary reason for friendship breakdown, especially if your friends don't like your choice of intimate partner, and vice versa. Very rarely will a person choose friends over their intimate partner. I don't know of any, but I'm sure there must be some. I don't know of anybody that has actually left their intimate partner because their partner has hurt their bestie's feelings. So I'm not sure that we can actually command loyalty from our friends. I think fidelity is a better description, because this is about staying connected to the truth, as discussed before. It includes open communication and it includes integrity. So I perceive that integrity as a core value, if you like. And, we're all different. I can cope with a harsh truth. I'm not going to fall apart if they tell me that I need to sort myself out, or I need to do X and Y, or that I'm insensitive or my communication style, because, I can be. And I can be a very blunt communicator as well. So I know this. I'm open to a criticism telling me that, that was probably a little bit insensitive, and then that gives me an opportunity to try and make good if possible, or try and mend my ways. So I see that as a friend. This particular slide is particularly where the Better Up slide or definition of friendship falls foul for me, where I look at it and I think, in whose world is this appropriate? It's very juvenile expectations, I feel, to transfer and project upon your friends. And I'm going to try and break this down a little bit. It sounds great. Empathy. Your friends will intuitively know how you feel. In whose world, I would say, isn't that a little bit assumptive and irresponsible? It translates as, I don't need to communicate my feelings to my friends because they should know automatically without me saying. No, they shouldn't know without you saying, right? That's an unreasonable expectation. However, if they do intuitively know what you're feeling, that's a good friend to be grateful for, okay? The thing is that we can have friends who don't intuitively know how we feel because they don't necessarily have the same life experiences as us, but that doesn't mean to say they're not a good friend. They just can't intuitively know or understand where we're coming from unless we actually explain it. And so this could mean, for example, a person that has been in a particularly... Look, I'm going to do the DV thing because obviously I've got experience at that, I could talk about this to somebody who has no experience of DV, and they're going to come with all their biases and perceptions about this. Now, a new person might come into my circle who has never worked within that particular industry. They've had no exposure to it whatsoever. It's outside of their comprehension, so they're not going to intuitively know and understand what it is that I might be feeling if I'm triggered. So a prime example of that might mean if I'm working with female survivors in a DV facility, and actually it's not going to bother me these days because I have actually done it, but let's say their violent partner turns up. Well, for me, I'm not particularly fazed these days. If their violent partner turns up, I just call the police and get them moved along. But you know what I mean? Back in the day, I could have a reaction to that, but if a person hasn't been in that situation, they're not going to know unless I explain to them what the issue was, So I see that business of empathy as defined here to be an unreasonable expectation of your friends. And rather than if you get it, then it's a blessing, and be grateful for that. Scratch that one off my moral compass. Anyway, if I would prefer a friend, actually, so this is my stuff, I would prefer a friend that just knows, to be honest, and say, look, I've got no idea what that must feel like, well, thank you for your honesty, Then the other one, confident. My God, I looked at that and I thought, that is a core value, is it, of what you need for a friend. So you can't be friends with anybody who is not super confident so that they can share their confidence with you. So there's a couple of things with that. Does that mean that if I get my confidence, bearing in mind the word contagion, is there an expectation that I become an emotional parasite there and that I feel confident because I'm sucking the confidence out of other people? To me, that's just insane in the first place. Then the other thing is, really, so if your friends have got to be confident, well, what happens to all the insecure people in the world with low self-esteem who don't have confidence? What, are they unworthy or undeserving of a good friend? My God, honestly, it's just who put together this list? Then the other one, they make you feel good. Your friends make you feel good and you're comfortable with them on your burned out days. Like, where's your emotional responsibility? Are you an adult? Can't you make yourself feel better if you're tired? Can't you go and organise a soak in the tub, maybe do a bit of meditation? Do you have to have your friends prop you up on those days when you're feeling fatigued and burned out? That's not what friends are, or I see that as using your friends. If you feel bad, don't use your friends to make yourself feel better. Then fun, they make you laugh. Well, I do agree with that. If you've got a good friend, you have a good laugh, nobody's going to dispute that. But don't they share the bad days as well? Don't you cry with each other? Don't you phone up and share the good, the bad, have a laugh at the sad times, cry at the sad times, whatever? Friends are not just about the good times, they're about all times. These are the really good friends we're talking about, of course, right? Then the business of low maintenance. I find that so stark. I've got to have a pause before I respond to that. I'm going to put this on pause and come back. So I took a breath, as you do. Okay, so first of all, before we talk about low maintenance, we're going to talk about the no judgment. No judgment is true, within context as well. Your friends, they're not going to judge you. They just want you to be happy, but they're humans too, right? And we do have to be relatively discerning about who we let close to us. But within this description, I look at that and think that's a little maternal or paternal, because that kind of describes the relationship I have with my adult children, is that, I see and recognise who they are. I don't like everything about them, to be honest. They're human. They have flaws and foibles. And I do just want them to be happy. Same deal. But as far as friends being low maintenance, they won't hold the fact against you that you're busy. Right. Well, okay. I would imagine that's a two-way street. They're happy to reconnect, low drama, no gossip, and the relationship is lighthearted. They were doing okay with this description until they got to the relationship is lighthearted. This is from my perspective, because no relationship is going to be all one and not the other. All good friendships are going to go through a period of stress and tension as well, as part of growing trust. So if it's just light-hearted and that's all it is, it's not a friendship, it's an acquaintance, or it's a fair weather friend. That's just my opinion. So roundabout now, of course, hopefully you're familiar with the concepts of the attributes that you would like in a friend, the non-negotiable core values that are important to you. And you'll also be aware of your own limitations with a bit of luck. And you'll also understand that with these friendships that we have, the healthy friendships, we don't get them from a sense of entitlement. They're reciprocal. And we need to be a good friend if we want to have good friends as well. So we understand our limitations. Now, I'll also look at this types of friend thing here, because the bottom line is it's absolutely impossible for each of us, whether that's you or the friends in your circle, to meet all of our criteria of what makes a good friend. As opposed to, you've got your core values, but then you've got your preferences and your wants in a friend as well. So when it comes to the wants or the desired qualities of a friend, I'll refer you back to the document, A Conscious Rethink, which has got the 25 attributes, which I see, well, from my perspective, they're not all the qualities that I would want to have in a friend. But I think if you've got a good friend, it's probably a really good laugh to actually go through that and say, I was reading this thing and here's the 25 qualities according to this lady that make a good friend, right? Because what you do is you establish, even there, you learn each other's limitations. I haven't done it, but I don't need to do it with the people that I'm thinking of, because I can already envisage their response. The one with they'll hold your hair back. That's okay for some people, but I can imagine the types of friends that I have would turn around and laugh at me if I said that I expected that of them. They'd be like, Jesus Christ, if you're that stupid that you're going to go out and drink yourself silly, not know your own limits, and then end up vomiting over a toilet bowl, don't expect me to hold your hair back for you. But then they might go, but I am your mate, so I'll probably put the Baroccas into a glass of water for you, and I'll hold it out there because I don't want to smell you vomiting or whatever. So there's that playfulness that's involved with the friendship as well, but there's not a dependence type thing. That's just not who and what we are. We're not those kind of people. And other ones like, and it'll be different for you because everybody is different. There was another one that I saw in there and I thought, oh my God, honestly, if my friends, if I said, let's hold hands, they'd be like, when did you become, a little flower that needs somebody to hold your hand while you take the new steps forward? That's just not who and what we are. And those are not the expectations. They're certainly not our needs. We're the sort of people that would be like, I'd rather you walk alongside me. You don't need to hold my hand. You don't need to prop me up. But I tell you what, if you stumble and fall, by all means, I'll grab your elbow. You know what I mean? I'll hold your elbow if you need it. That's just who we are. So the different types of friends, if I needed somebody that was a nurturer, okay, all right. So let's just look at the types of friends. I'm going to share a story with you. Many years ago, in the course of conversation with one of my friends, they shared with me some information they'd read somewhere or whatever, and they said that the information that came through was that we all need to have a minimum of 4 friends that meet certain requirements because of this business, that we can't be all things to all people all the time, and that a rounded persona or a healthy personality is influenced by healthy people that have specific attributes. Now, within this context, there is the person, I've called it the change maker here on the left. These are the people that support and cheer you on, if you like, those ones that, you can do it, you've got it. And the, what, have you thought about this? I know you're not happy. So in a way, they're solution finders, right? Then there's your mentor, who gives you practical advice for managing some of the problems that you have in your life. So that can be the person that goes like, yeah, good idea, I can see why you want to make those changes, but I tell you what, when you think about doing X and Y, I'd be mindful that you don't create other domino reactions that you might not be happy with, right? So that's the mentor. Then there's the person that is the spiritual or the emotional uplifter, the one that's the bit of the sage, if you like, that you can go and muse with, and develop your own understanding and spiritual awareness, if you like. Contemplate the mysteries of the universe or the mind. I'm just trying to think how else I would describe this. Hang on, I'm going to have a think. Okay, that one would probably be the person that understands feelings really well and emotions, and can help you unpack emotional stuff, if you like. So a bit of a sounding board and help you work through things. And the nurturer and the confident is probably the one that you tell those innermost secrets to. And if they're a nurturer, not everybody's comfortable with saying this kind of thing. So there would be that one friend, at least, that turns around and says, yeah, but I love you. I know you feel down, but I love you. You're important to me, that kind of thing. So obviously, the more people that we have in our circle or sphere, if you like, the more that need is shared amongst people, and we don't become a drain to those people that we consider to be our friends, because we can drain our friends. It's not deliberate, and hopefully there's a balance in our friendships, that we're there for them as well, because sometimes life is up and down for all of us. But anyway, these are the different types of friends a person can have. Just going to put in place a reminder here before we move on to evaluating our friendships and relationships, which is about the setting boundaries. When we look to set boundaries in our relationships, not only do we look to put in place tight boundaries, sometimes they need to be rigid if it's to do with our core values, and sometimes they can be core flexible boundaries if it relates to desired attributes of friends. So it's really important when setting boundaries that, one, you know your values, you know your limits, you know what you need, you know what you want or would like, and that you're grateful for the blessings. If you've got a friend, well, in fact, if you've got a lot of friends that meet your wants, you're a very lucky person. And then also understand and know that reciprocity, I keep struggling over this word at the moment, is vital to a good friendship, because we're not entitled to have friends. There is a responsibility to be a friend as well if we want to have friends. And now we're going to go into evaluating. I decided for the purposes of this video to just do a Google on the book and see whether or not it's actually still in publication, if it's for sale, and what the cost is. And I just saw that it is still for sale. You can still purchase it. I bought it back in 2003, and it's currently, I think it said $9.69. That kind of didn't really grab my attention. What grabbed my attention was the fact that I did not know until today that when I'm referring to Kerry Armstrong, I'm actually referring to the Australian actress. I never ever knew that she was the author of this book. So there you go. You learn a new thing every day. But anyway, this is an image of what the book actually looks like. So, of course, we've covered a lot of ground in this video and in the previous one. And as stated at the beginning of the video, what you're getting is a condensed version of something like 28 hours, possibly even more, therapy or access to therapeutic information just with the content in these videos. Now, the benefits of doing these activities, and I will go through the activity in the next video, and I think that's probably going to be about an hour as well. If it's too much for you, pause the video, come back to it. If it's too boring, use your little wheel nut, turn the speed up or slow it down, whatever suits you, because this is about your comfort levels. But what I can assure you is that you will receive benefits from doing this activity, because it doesn't matter who we are. This is a good process for all of us to adopt at different times, because it teaches us the skills of empowerment, if you like. We're less likely to become victims of life when we're actually standing in our power, and this activity will empower you. You will be empowered because you will learn how to identify and value your good friends. You'll know which relationships are worthwhile and who you should be investing your emotions in and who you should continue to. You can evaluate when to put a person basically on the back burner, if you like, not because you don't like them or love them or care about them, but the boundaries or the circles of friendship are continually changing. And that doesn't mean we've got people coming in and out of our life. It just means that the friendship circles are flexible, but we're going to have a look at that in the next video. The other benefits are that not only will you be able to identify who is trustworthy and who isn't based on your own levels of comfort, because it's never about them, it's about our levels of comfort. You'll also learn to develop and expand on your own levels of self-respect and to trust your own intuition. You'll learn skills for letting go and releasing those people where you've got unhealthy relationships, but to do it in a loving way without recrimination and anger, and instead with kindness. You'll be able to look at your boundaries with greater ease and maintain them. You'll be able to see by looking at these circles, when should your boundaries be flexible? When do you need to make them more solid? All of this stuff will jump right out at you when you start doing the next activity, and it will all lend itself to you being able to sustain greater peace in your life. Now, the other aspect of these circles, which I find really interesting after having done my training, is we can look at those circles. And when we review our friendships, so it's not necessarily about judging our friendships or judging people, it's looking at the whole complete cycle of our friendships and identifying, are there gaps in my social circle? Do I need to open the door and allow space in my life for new people to come in that might be good mentors, or they might be teachers, or whatever? You can evaluate for yourself looking at these circles, and the ultimate is you will feel more complete, more whole, and more aligned with the integrity of your soul. And that's all anybody really wants. For now, though, my friends, I'm going to say thank you very much. The links to part 1 and part 3 will be in the descriptions of this, and I recommend that you watch all of them one after the other. Do them in the order that you're meant to do them, just so that you receive the greatest benefit of them. But for now, my friends, take care, have a wonderful day. See you on the next video. Light and love, blessings to all.